Chapter 18. The Train. Pip woke with a start. Lucia was breathing softly and evenly beside her as she slept with her head tucked under her wing. Blearily lifting her head from her bed of leaves, Pip found all was dark and quiet in the hollow under the fallen tree. But as she drowsily rested her head once more, her ears pricked, hearing the sound of wings clattering nearby. Sitting bolt upright, she stared through the leafy roof of the hollow and into the cool moonlight, shimmering silver through the treetops. Catching a glimpse of Leon's strong, speckled wings flapping in the dark, Pip hastily leapt to her paws and crept out of the hollow as quickly and as quietly as she could. Hesitating for one last look at the umbrella wedged safely beside Lucia, she raced forward and chased the birds carrying Madame Fargher and Hans on their backs through the forest. She had not travelled far before a galloping thud charged through the trees behind her. An enormous, dark shape vaulted over her, blocking her path on all sides. Standing before her, pointing his great head of antlers down at her, was Henri, flaring his nostrils and stamping the ground. "No, Pip," he said, his large mahogany eyes glistening in the moonlight. "I cannot let you pass." "I'm going," she said firmly, trying to dart out of his way. "No," he said, swiftly blocking her path once more. "It is forbidden." Pip dashed forward, effortlessly weaving around him as if he was not there at all. He galloped after her, hopping and twisting across the ground, trying not to crush her under his hooves. As Pip zigzagged through Henri's long legs, the stag stumbled. He fell to the ground with a crash, and Pip skidded to a halt and collided into his flank with a small thump. "All right, stop it," Henri said, panting heavily. "If I cannot convince you to turn back to the hollow, then I will take you to watch the mission myself. It's not safe for you to go on your own." "Fine," said Pip breathlessly, secretly relieved he would carry her the rest of the way. "Then climb up and be quiet. If Madame Fargher sees or hears us, we will both be in a world of trouble." Clutching his velvety fur in her paws, she clambered up his body, scaling the length of his back and up his long neck to the top of his head. Climbing up an antler, Pip smiled with excitement and wrapped her tail tightly around it. Pushing up from his knees and standing tall, Henri cantered through the ground ferns, effortlessly weaving through the trees in great strides that hardly touched the ground. "We're close," Henri whispered after a time, as church bells struck 12 o'clock nearby. He slowed, his breath puffing in and out of his nose. "Those bells are coming from the monastery." Pip craned her neck for a better view, but she saw nothing at all except tall tree trunks creaking gently in the shadows. Looking about, a cold feeling of dread crept over her fur. "I feel like we're being watched," Pip squeaked, nervously searching the gloom. As the bells ceased their toll, only the eerie sound of their breath and the breeze gently sighing through the leaves remained. "These trees have seen more than we will ever know," Henri murmured, looking into the treetops and quickening his pace, his hackles betraying a shudder of unease. Hearing water trickle nearby, Henri moved cautiously forward. The forest cleared up ahead in a barren belt through the trees. As Henri and Pip reached it, Leon and G.I. Joe reappeared above and swiftly beat their wings. Quickly swerving to the right, Henri tucked himself behind the cover of the thicket, his ears twitching warily on his head. A wide river glittered in the gloom before them, and Pip's heart was in her mouth, watching her friends fly through the shadows towards a timber bridge, eerily silhouetted against the moonlit sky. "I feel like something terrible's going to happen," she whispered with a shiver. "Shh, it's only your nerves," Henri hushed, shifting on his hooves. But what if it isn't? Ma petite amie, he said softly, looking up at the young mouse wrapped around his antlers. You must not move or say another word now, no matter how much you want to. If we are seen or heard, it could ruin everything for us all. Pip nodded, promising herself she would watch in silence, but she could not ignore the fear pulsing under her fur, and she bit her lip, hoping the horrible drumming in her ears would soon go away. The birds reached the bridge and swooped steeply upwards. G.I. Joe briefly hesitated above it, and Hans leapt off his back, hitting the tracks on 4 paws. Instantly, the pigeon flew sharply to the left and disappeared into the treetops on the far side of the river, while Leon swooped low, dropping Madame Fourcade on the tracks in a prickly somersault. The eagle burst upwards to the right and vanished into the forest, not knowing Pip and Henri were watching silently from the nearby thicket. Hans and Madame Fourcade were racing across the tracks when suddenly Leon squawked from the trees. A moment later, a whistle screeched and Pip felt the quake of the approaching train increase with every breath she made. "What are they doing?" Pip whispered, fear fluttering in her stomach as she watched Hans and Madame Fourcade frantically dip their heads over the far side of the bridge and over again. Below, its timber columns had narrowed where they had been gnawed around the water's edge. "They're searching for beavers," Henri said, flicking his tail nervously. "They should have finished chewing the wooden poles into points by now, so the bridge collapses under the weight of the train." "Where are they?" she said. The whistle shrieked again, making all the animals flinch in alarm. Tearing through the trees beside Pip and Henri's hiding place, the train approached the bridge with its front lamp brightening the darkness like furious, all-seeing eyes. Hans stopped abruptly, and looking over to Madame Fourcade, his desperate expression mirrored hers across the bridge. The beavers were nowhere to be seen. "Emile," Henri whispered, puffing angrily through his nose. "Where the hell are you?" Suddenly, a small, furry head popped up through the surface of the water beneath the rat and the hedgehog. It was André, Emile's son, speaking animatedly and pointing to the sky with his broad, waxy tail slapping against the river in warning. "What's he saying?" Pip said, hearing only her heart thumping in her ears. "Something's happened," Henri said. "They have to get out of there." The insistent chug of the train approaching drowned out his voice, and the stag quickly shied into the gloom, avoiding its front lamps as they illuminated the trees where they had just stood. A moment later, the bridge shuddered under the weight of the train, carrying 8 carriages into the night. "Run!" Pip cried, watching Hans and Madame Fourcade scramble fearfully across the tracks. "Run, damn it!" Henri said, stamping his hooves. Pip could barely watch as Hans and Madame Fourcade frantically sprinted across the bridge. As the train grazed their heels, they hurled themselves from the tracks and crash-landed on the grassy bank. "They made it," Pip squeaked, jumping for joy on the stag's antler. But at once she and Henri gasped with alarm. Unknown to Madame Fourcade, Hans and André, 4 dark shapes with enormous wings and horn-like tufts of feathers on their heads, now hovered malevolently in the moonlight above their heads. "Axis sentry owls," Henri whispered, shivering with fear. "Watch out!" Pip yelled at the top of her lungs. At that moment, the train whistle gave one last high-pitched scream. Shivering with terror, Pip watched helplessly as the eagle owls plunged to earth with their deadly talons glinting in the gloom. In one brief, savage moment, 2 owls snatched Hans and Madame Fourcade off the ground. Instantly, André dived underwater with a final smack of his tail, but the other owls were already plummeting from the sky. Fishing him out of the water, they flapped their powerful wings and swooped upwards, joining the 2 other birds. Carrying their struggling prisoners above the speeding train, they swiftly disappeared into the shadows. "We have to save them," Pip said, feeling the sting of tears in her eyes. "Hold on tight, Pip," Henri said, galloping back into the trees. "First, we must warn the others. Every one of us is in danger now."